Good day, everyone. EQ Poker here with another live play, continuing to break down what a professional process actually looks like. As I've been getting back into the streets, I just keep being reminded of how far theory is from practice, how easy it is to have this perfect ideal in my head, and how different that looks in reality. When I play a session, I'm just constantly surprised by how my opposition are actually playing because, surprise, surprise, people think and play differently than me. It's so common. It's maybe the most common tendency I see that gets people stuck without realizing they're stuck is projection. Essentially, what I said, assuming that other people think and operate like we do. There's maybe nothing more dangerous in terms of capping your potential and deceiving yourself in poker because, especially when what you're doing is working well enough, when you don't have to see how you're projecting in order to continue moving forward, you might never see through it. The session has a few good examples of projection at play where, just based on my initial read of a situation, I'm worried about my opponent having a specific hand, and I miss the fact that actually odds are they're a fish and they're going to show up with something really surprising. So let's dive in and keep your eyes peeled. Yo. Interesting situation up here. I've been getting check min raised a lot. Hey, welcome to the live play. Diving into the action as always. But yeah, I've been facing these like min raises. I think like the hand could go either way. I don't know if this is some freaky bot strat. I don't know if it's super nutted. I don't think it's super nutted. I think it's like pretty mergy. We're just gonna be able to get it in this way. But I'm gonna, run through spots like that and just see. And mergy a lot. That's really, really, really weird. That's really weird. But it always feels weird. That's it's gonna happen like 1 in 5 times. I believe what I've been seeing. What I've been seeing is that it's good to get it in against those lines. Um, I think my brain is actually like misremembering and just going like, oh, they always cooler me when that happens, but no. My memory is not generally reliable like that, especially like reactively in the moment. Too easy. But that's the beauty of having a database. This is why we track hands. I think they cleaned up quite a bit of the bots, but some are still lurking, and I'll have to see. Whatever the case, I've found the 200 L games so far to be pretty solid. I haven't put in a ton of volume getting back, but some very promising tables. We keep getting into spots like that. Assuming the site continues to be legit as it has as long as I've been on here, it'd be fine. Okay, so these 3x opens are coming around a bit more. If we face a jam here, it's awkward, but I think like typically bottom of calling range, and similar from here. There's just no guarantee they aren't going to shove something like jacks, though it's very unlikely nowadays. Say it was like under the gun open, early position 3-bet, and then we face the jam, we could maybe get away from it. Okay, board like this. I think we can simply range bet it. They can for sure be flatting aces, I'd kind of expect it. And so we're sort of just hoping to get to showdown. My hand doesn't want to put another bet in. Here we face a donk. Interesting lines coming in. I'm going to go for the raise. And raise a size where, say, a weak heart doesn't just want to continue. I would prefer to just take it down with this hand that's effectively bluffing. And we face the raise again, and that looks pretty strong. I'm not going to just flick my stack in here when we could be drawing dead, whether or not I have my suspicions. And here we can hope Hope to just check it down against jacks. Perfect, I hope. Guess they could have like ace queen, but seems like something like maybe jack 10 suited. Pocket eights. That's cool. And so these are like the spots in 4-bet pots that are an open question for me. Is something like pocket eights meant to be bluffing there? Are they meant to be targeting stuff like queens and jacks to fold? I think so. But it's super easy to just get paranoid in 4-bet pots. And yeah, I mean, under that adrenaline, take the easy option. Like, usually you don't bluff pairs. When you have showdown, you don't bluff it. And they do have showdown there. But you also get in situations where there's no other way to bluff. And how strong is my range really when I check flop, check turn? It's hard to say, but yeah, I could have kings, yeah, I could have aces. I could choose to trap anything. But what I'm getting at is if their strategy is to like call eights and better, or even more pocket pairs, like just call every pocket pair they 3-bet pre-flop, float that flop, and never bluff them, I think they might be putting in too much money with those hands without a clear plan. You can definitely like overinvest. Nice to take it down there. Limp pot from aggro guy. They call the big overbet. Yeah, and you can bluff him. Like that's snap call. I don't think his range is all like Jack X plus that never folds to snap check the flop there. It's always scary because you're always playing someone who could look you up. Always playing someone who, especially with this sort of VPIP and like aggro timing, can just decide you're full of it. I call. Sometimes you just got to run it. You get a weird thing where, you know, every spot's different, but it can feel safer to bluff smaller, let's say, like to just bluff a normal size, because we're risking less. But then we're not putting that much pressure on the bluff catching range, like the second pair. When we do the big overbet, it feels scary, it feels risky, but we're putting more pressure on. And so it can be riskier. It can be a really bad play, a very unprofitable play, or a less profitable play to bluff for the small size against that sort of range. Against that range where we expect them to not have much top pair plus. That's one thing, is like being clear on where you're doing that and why. Having your conviction makes it easier to do that hard thing that other people struggle to do. Like very few players find it natural to overbet as a bluff, whether or not you're against a fish, right? And in some spots, that's a terrible play. So it's not as simple as, oh, just overbet bluff the fish more, right? You got to diagnose where. And we hope to check down against ace high. I think this is slightly too low to value bet. But obviously that depends how often people are checking pairs twice. That's a board where you can have a lot of second and third pair. Do you think, you know, that's a close one though? Like there's countless value betting spots like that where the solver will tell you one way or the other, but little bits of insight into someone's strategy, especially if they don't try to emulate a solver, will just change things completely. Live reads, any read can change things completely. I'm talking abstractly, I'm talking about, like, I guess hypothetically. I'm not saying that you always know what to do, but I'm just throwing out that regular reminder that it's always shifting. There's always different plays on the table. You can always be picking stuff up and observing. I don't want to overstate that. I don't want to emphasize that to the detriment of just understanding solid theory baseline. But they're really not separate things. You're always ranging people implicitly with your play. And so Also, just raising the question, let me just ground it in the poker thing. Should I value bet rivered fourth pair there on the 3 Broadway board, King Jack 10, all those high cards, when I'm blind against blind and we check to the river and I river the pair? They don't have a lot of better 6x or 5x at the 5 ad 5-6. They don't have a lot of better 5s in range. They have an unknown amount of King X, Jack X, and 10x in range that are probably not going to fold to 1 bet. They have ace high that could call. And they also have like lower pocket pairs. That's another thing. There's just so many pairs that are going to call 1 bet that my feeling is generally we aren't going to do well value betting such a low fourth pair in that situation. But you can see how with enough information, my opponent bets all their pairs on the flop. My opponent doesn't trap on the turn. I don't think that's going to be the case in that situation, but with that, you could go for it. If you've seen your opponent call ace high in a bunch of spots where ace high is maybe a bit looser than standard, a bit looser than they're meant to be calling, then there's a lot more hands that most people would fold that guy's going to call that are still probably in his range. So maybe I could bet the 5-6. When it comes to like online anonymous unknowns, it's harder to have a read that's going to lead to like a really big change. Like that would be, I think, quite out of line. I'm just assuming that this 4-bet in this formation is a little strong and that I don't really need to have 6-7. Rarely do I find myself looking for more bluffs or thinking that they're over bluffing. But say in a live game, you can lean more on that type of fundamental thinking of what is my opponent's strategy, what am I going to do about it? And then there's a spectrum of sort of how studied they are, how balanced you need to be. Basically, there's a spectrum of how close to the solver their range and how they play is going to be on the river. How they perceive how you play, what they know of your strategy, what they know of a solver strategy, that always varies. And so there are times where you don't think solver at all. It might align most decisions, most profitable decisions, maybe 8 out of 10, are going to be something that the solver says is good or allowed, like a mixed play, or clearly the best play, or not losing much EV. Almost every decision falls in that spectrum. Then there's all of these unknown, unprovable elements, these intangibles that you can pick up intuitively. You sort of just combining all of your knowledge, all of your reads, and what you're picking up in the moment. And that's how you pick between those lines. That's how you find the exceptional lines. That's how you narrow their range or define their range more precisely than a random solver lookup. And so when you're ranging them better and responding appropriately, that's where you make money in poker. So that's the abstract, right? The specifics of how to do that are just defining the problem more accurately. What's really going on here? You know, my opponent, a reg in the cutoff opens and they've c-bet 75% on 7-5-3. It's an interesting spot. What do we do with 4s? I choose to check raise it as a bluff. I have my reasons. But I'd say the first step, which a lot of people neglect or they don't get down enough, is being clear on how you play. What are your defaults and why? And where are your defaults going well? And where are your defaults getting you into trouble? And then as you progress through the stakes, where are your defaults or where is your strategy no longer effective where it used to be effective? If you're running people over with aggression or you're being really exploitative with your value betting, who does that work against and why? And who is going to see through that? Who's going to be able to counter you? That's sort of, again, I think that's the whole progression through poker. That's a very big task, you know, how you approach that, how you answer those questions, and your sort of system and process for integrating that, applying it, and sort of practicing the wisdom, I guess, like actually making that practical, letting it really, you know, playing better, making better decisions as a result of looking into that sort of thing. That's what starts setting you apart. Like, that's how you grow. That's what the process is for. And then playing, especially with the variants you experience day to day, is just experimenting. But you can also, in terms of looking for your results in the really big picture and the long term, and knowing that the variance is super insane, you can also just look in the moment and daily. How did you feel? Why were you doing what you were doing? Where are you feeling conflicted? What's giving you trouble, and what's, again, feeling really natural? So you get that sort of inner guidance, intuitive data of I feel like confident in my convictions, my plays are working out, and I understand why I'm making them. I understand where my opponents are making mistakes. I understand where the edge is coming from. But then also there's tons of spots where you just are confused or you're not sure. And you can look at it that way, the actual results and the moment-to-moment feeling and confidence, and use them to inform each other, develop a study path, a study plan, break down what you're working on into manageable chunks, work on it, integrate it, apply it. People approach that really different ways, different levels of organized, and like different levels of how much are you actually structuring that? How formal is it? Or are you sort of just picking it up and winging it, introducing a new variable, introducing a new dimension of it? I'm not trying to say that one way is better or worse. With that, I'm just raising the idea that there's no one right way to do it. Your process probably wouldn't look exactly like mine or anyone else's. It can even be hard to exactly reduce your process to one thing, right? It is more than mental. It's like how you're living, you know? But there's all sorts of little pieces that I think everyone needs, and most systems also follow. So, like, you need periods of knowing what to work on, like get the right information, how you study and apply that information, actually practicing it and seeing how it goes on the tables and learning from those results, reviewing your hands and getting feedback and checking, getting external checks and confirmation, so getting coaching and mentorship or peer review, taking time away from the game, like daily breaks, monthly breaks, taking time off to actually let your brain compress and internalize stuff, changing how much or how little you study based on how confident you are and the game you're trying to beat. Some games take more research and more studiousness than others, just because the caliber of competition is much higher, because obviously the best players tend to play higher stakes or the best games they can to maximize their edge. As you rise, the sort of standard tends to rise with it. I'm willing to get in against all these guys, but this under the gun limp is kind of weird. But I don't expect, like, he's not going to be doing any frisky limp calling against this action. They should pretty much be seeing the aces kings type trap or a fold. The call is very weird. So there's possibly something like tens, but I'm actually quite worried about that being aces. Call and I fold if he shoves. I hate that. Okay. This is close to a flop fold. It just depends on how high conviction I am in this guy. Like, he's full of shit. That's a nice river. Could just be a fish as well. Please just show me tens. I'll be so shocked to take this down, but I probably aren't giving them enough of a fish interval. That's so brutal. That's so brutal, but we got it in good. Once I got through him, I thought I had it. Okay, under the gun had 9-8 suited, so we were on track. 9-8 suited. Okay, they called the flush draw, hit the 9. They could have absolutely blown me off my equity. Their hand was sort of the perfect hand to shove turn, because you need to be able to beat the other guy, the dead money in the pot. But you can make me fold better You don't want to let me see river for free. Yeah, I mean, I guess they were just scared I had it and trying to show down. But the thing is, you can't bluff me with trash. Like, you don't even have it after the action on the flop, right? So it's those merges that end up making up. It's the only way you get me to fold my equity, if you get what I mean. Just like a general thing for like multi-way and dead money pots. So yeah, brutal to not take down, but very happy where we ended up relatively. I'm also very happy to have gotten action from like 9-8 suited after that 4-bet. Focus on the process, break things down, and if you're overwhelmed, just compare options. So what are you considering, you know? Like check or bet turn. Once I check turn, what happens? Once I bet turn, what happens? Which is better? And now you know how to generate EV in a poker hand. You at least know how to approach that. You might be wrong, but by trying to answer that question, by making an educated guess, testing it, like reality checking it, maybe failing, maybe getting it right, or of course just realizing it's close and maybe preferential, like there is no right answer. There you go, like you're learning and growing. I'd also recommend adding that category, or at least really being open to that gray and just going, I don't know, I reckon this. It can't be too bad. I looked at it and it's kind of close, and I'm doing this for these reasons. And if that doesn't work, or there's an exception to it, etc., you're going to add that on, right? It's a given. You're going to keep internalizing it. You're always updating. And poker's fun. And you're working on strategy, then you're actually getting to play, and the results are just data. Or just feedback. It's not a statement about your like value as a person. It's temporary feedback on how you played today. So take ownership of how you're playing and go from there. EQ out.